Welcome to lesson 9 of the Tantric Taste. Look at you. You made it. We're here. Today, we're going to put everything together and we're going to put it together with a very simple exercise and also just some very logical advice since this is involving sexuality, sexual energy, and magnetism. So we're going to explore how to pull and test masculine energy before anybody gets triggered. I'm not talking about testing in the manipulative, immature way. This is an energetic and spiritual test. And the first test that we're going to do is on ourselves, on our sense of discernment. I'm also going to teach you a very simple practice to magnetize. All right, so let's begin. If you are in a relationship, then maybe skip this area. I'll try to put some timestamps on the video. But if you are single or if you wish to pull on energy from any other man other than your partner, then it's very important whenever we're on this path, because we are dealing with sexual energy and then all the distortions that come up in that, to be very clear mentally, to have a lot of clarity around what is it that we are seeking, what are the boundaries, what are the parameters. So first thing is to get very clear on what are your requirements as a woman to engage with a man sexually. These are things that we don't think about whenever we have our sexual awakening, whenever we are hitting puberty. These are things that actually most of us never thought about. So this is the moment is now to actually start thinking, okay, what are my requirements as a woman to open myself up sexually? And it's not as obvious as it might seem. And we can see it because, I hear the stories. I've had experiences. We all see it in the world that whenever we're dealing with sexuality and relationships, there's all of these blurry lines and there's a sense of compromising. And sometimes we let our boundaries just, get flopped over, or sometimes we get to, close up with them and don't allow anybody to get close to us. And both extremes are not healthy. Tantra is also a dance, and in this interweaving process that we're doing on connecting with ourselves, we do have to interact with other people. And whenever we are interacting with men that are pursuing us sexually, or that we are looking for a partner, this is the moment of truth whenever the actual test comes, because you're not just choosing, if you are in the tantric path, you're choosing somebody that is going to help you grow spiritually. This isn't just about the superficial level, getting married, having kids, building a house, doing business to it's almost this will be your companion for the continuation of your growth. It becomes your partner that is going to become your mirror and your tantric consort. And there's a lot of weight in that, because you can only grow the masculine partner that you choose, whatever depth and whatever spiritual strength they have, you're going to be intertwining with it. You're going to be mixing with it. So this is the importance of taking this process seriously and not going into the polarity of because now I'm in this sexual energy. It's I'm just unconsciously pulling energy. No, a lot of awareness into this process and responsibility for yourself. And I invite you to look at yourself as the guardian of you, the guardian of this very innocent part. Bringing back and weaving back into Tripura Sundari, this is the energy of the young goddess. Whenever we look at Bara Tripura Sundari, she is one of the 3 red goddesses. So the red goddess is it's the goddess of passion, of that primal sexual energy that is innocent. This innocent sexual energy, it's the core of who you are. And you have to become the inner mother and the inner father of that part of you. So inner mother, dealing with all the emotions. Inner father, this is going to be about becoming that inner father to that sexual raw innocent sexual energy that we all have within, that lives in the womb, that lives in that sacral center, and that we have been activating through that mantra, that clean energy. Like that's it. That is this specific goddess. So whenever you are in the courting process with a potential partner, first things is, root chakra. Is there safety? And women are more vulnerable than men. This is a fact. We are more vulnerable because the feminine, whoever holds the children in any species, is the most vulnerable, because there is the potential for pregnancy. So like keeping that in mind, it's like there has to be safety on that level, on that primal animalistic level, first and foremost. Do not ever engage sexually with somebody that you wouldn't ever see yourself having children with. And this is tricky whenever, like, I'm not saying that it's gonna happen now or that that's the person you're choosing, but think, like, when it comes to safety and the primal safety, it's going back to the animal body. If there was an crazy accident and I were to get pregnant by this person, is there a sense of disgust in me from his energy under that lens? This is an important question to ask. And it doesn't mean that the person is you're going to get pregnant by the person, but it does help you connect with the animal part of yourself that is choosing partners. One thing to note is that if you are taking hormonal birth control, your own animalistic radar to sense a good partner it's polluted by the hormones. And please don't burn me in the comments. It's just I'm not saying do it or don't do it. I'm just saying, like, keeping that in mind. Okay, because if you are not connected to like that primal essence, the smell, somebody's smell will tell you a lot about that. That's like the animal that's stepping down. So if that's the case, don't worry. There's other ways. There's like mental ways of having discernment and like creating that safety for the interaction with masculine energy. Second point is there an intention that has been clearly set? We need this for safety. I actually, whenever it comes to casual sex, I don't want to work with anybody that is in that state of consciousness, because that means that you have not really connected with the sanctity and the sacredness of sexual energy. Sexual energy is extremely precious for us. Like, our sexuality is sacred. So if you're in this energy of like casually sleeping around, then this isn't for you. And I should have said that in the first day, not in the last day. But, because it is, we have to be responsible with this energy. So making sure that there has been an intention clearly set on what's the dynamic of the container. If you're the type of woman that you are, where like you're in a time in your life where you want to like find somebody to make a family, it's very different than a very young woman that is just like exploring herself and wanting to connect with somebody that is probably, they're going to college or they're just getting started in their life. So what is the container that I as a woman need in order for myself to feel safe enough to open up sexually? That's like that first line of defense, of understanding ourselves and being responsible for our sexuality. Now, what is the biggest spiritual test for the Tantrika to test a man? And it's this one. Number one is he actively pursuing you? It's that simple. If you become the pursuer, you become the giving element. And in Tantra, we are receiving. There's all of these solo practices that you're giving to yourself and you're playing with both energies. But whenever we want to, we're doing the transition of like white to red under the umbrella of Pink Tantra, is he actively pursuing you? Because if he's not, that's not the tantric partner that you want. That's not somebody that you want to engage with sexually. If you have to pursue, then you become the giving element, and that is connected to mother energy, not to consort energy. In Tantra, you need to see eye to eye. And because we are connecting the animal with the divine, we have to go back to those animalistic principles of the masculine in the species pursues the feminine in the species. Whenever you look at birds, I don't know what's the name of this species, but they do the most beautiful dance show for the little female, and they like flip their heads, and like that, for me, that's nature. That's nature. That's saying like, let me reproduce with you, and so dropping into the animal, that's like the primary requirement for tantric union. I'm not saying that you cannot have intimate, sacred sexual connection with somebody that initially wasn't pursuing you, but it's like, if you start pursuing, like, think about it. If I am a woman and I start pursuing a man and maybe he wasn't interested, he's like, oh, she's pursuing me, she wants to have sex with me. Of course, he's going to respond to that. So it's like, keep your cards close to your chest. Keep the mystery, that feminine mystery of like, I don't know what's there, because then you'll be able to know whether he is actively pursuing you or not. It's that simple. And noticing if there's any like desperate energy coming to the surface, that's information for you to take note on yourself and to like work with yourself. And if there is that desperate grasping energy, then that tells you that you gotta go back and do some inner work connected to the mother wound. It's that simple. It's not bad, it's not shameful, it's not like how dare you or you're not ready. It's just more information. Key here that I've repeated in multiple lessons in this series is, there's nothing wrong with anything. It's simply what is, and our job is to observe things without judgment. That is the ultimate inner marriage. That's that weaving of like, oh, I see myself, and there's no punishment or distortion. It just simply is pure witnessing. So once we have passed this spiritual test of, yes, there is an active pursuer, the most important advice, once that has been established, is to not compromise. So before we talked about like, what are my requirements to be sexually involved with a man? Well, you don't compromise on those. And you have to be clear on those before you get the hormonal hit of being in the presence that's somebody that you find sexually attractive. If you try to decide that after you've met the person, guess what you're gonna do? You're gonna design it around them, because that's what you want. There's that primal carnal desire that is like being triggered in that moment. So that's why we spend so much time and so much attention on setting up that spiritual foundation, to create that peacefulness, to create that stillness. Because whenever the animal gets activated, you'll be able to observe it, and you have enough inner spaciousness to be able to hold your libido, your sexual energy, without collapsing. One thing that I want to share that I've seen is that whenever we sit in this very, in the feminine polarity, whenever we are, talking about this, about like a man and a woman, in that sexual polarity, it's very common for women to unconsciously dominate. Why? Because we have jobs and we work in, masculine structures where you are meant to, sound a certain way, and there's all of this like conditioning that we have. But remember that like under the tantric lens, we're playing with solar and lunar energies. And the lunar energy is the responsive element. So my invitation is, during those moments, try to notice whether you are responding or dominating. Remember how I said, like, make sure you're being pursued and you're not pursuing and then like manipulating your way to be pursued, but you're genuinely understand that you are the one being pursued. If you're being pursued, there's going to be a dominating energy. Remember, I'm stepping into red territory, so I'm stepping into the animal. So there's going to be that dominating energy. The dominating energy holds the conversation, holds the container. It doesn't mean that you just stand there quiet and just go like, yes, no. No. It means that you are responding to the energy. You are responding to what is being given to you. Instead of like, if there is silence, he doesn't say anything. Stay in silence, feel. That's your opportunity to feel how your body feels the presence. Because if there's like a trigger of like, oh my God, you're probably talking to a beautiful trauma bond. And that's okay too. We need to go through those. Because purifying certain traumas through intimate relationships, it's, for me, in my opinion, is one of the fastest ways as well. There's so much that we can do solo. And then there's so many things that, we need to be in partnership with another person to really get through it. So if you're able to experience that sense of safety in the body, peacefulness, just, an inner stillness, then that's information telling you, yes, this is a good potential consort. There is this energy. And because you were the one that was pursued, that the intention, is going there. Like, you are the receiving element. Something to master for this process is silence. Can you learn to be comfortable with silence? Because that silence gives you space to connect with your body. And that's where you're gonna see the results of all of these body practices, of edging your sexual energy, of connecting with your heart center, of pulling the energy up. Like, this is the moment where you create the spaciousness to feel how your body is responding to the specific solar energy that is in front of you. So I made a few questions, and you can find them in the workbook as well, to help you trigger this inner father energy, so you can identify what are your parameters, what are your values, and how to get clear-headed whenever your sexual energy is being churned and triggered, because you are in the presence of a solar being that is triggering that sexual response. So first things is about values, and is what attributes in a man inspire respect in me. What are the qualities that will trigger a sense of devotion towards another person? What makes me feel devoted to another person? If I were to see myself as the guardian or the chaperone of a very divine woman, of the goddess herself, and I am responsible for her safety and for her well-being, what are the external structures that a man must have in his life for you to offer this divine woman to him? This is a big one, because this is, this can vary depending on like what phase in your life you're in, but you need to understand that, like, that is important. This isn't just ungrounded spiritual work where you're just, throwing caution to the wind and just like living in a river and washing by I mean, if that's what you want to live like, then go for it. But most likely you want to participate in society and the systems that are created. So that's why this question is important, because there is a lot of self-betrayal that happens whenever there is that trigger of sexual energy and there is a history of some form of developmental wound or, childhood trauma or anything like that. What are the personal values that are important for me in a partner? So these are value-centered questions. When it comes to the sexual questions, does he watch pornography or the equivalent of it? Why is this important? Because if he does watch pornography, he's constantly releasing his sexual energy. And you don't want that. Think of that, remember like the ritual of the energetic cords and all of that? That also applies to men, that applies to all of us in a different way. There's a different movement of the energy, but it's the same thing. And if you are putting so much focus and attention on your sexual energy and your sexual mastery, why on earth would you allow a man that doesn't have at least control on a very basic level of his own sexual energy? I'll probably expand more on this, but I'm gonna link a video here. I'll link a video here, so if you want to dive deeper into this subject, you can watch it. Does he have a lot of female nudity in his life? Basically, let's say you go to a guy's house and you notice that there's a bunch of posters of naked women around. That also shows a lack of control of his own sexual energy, because it's constantly being churned by the images around. That tells you also a lot about like the internal state. So these are things to, observe, to like become your own father and like see, perceive what's there. Does he push for sexual intimacy early on before knowing you, or vice versa, before knowing you or before you know him? So this is a huge red flag as well. I mean, I don't have to expand on that one. Does he get distracted by your body or other women's bodies? This is important because if you notice, like, if you're on a date and you look very beautiful, of course there's gonna be that. But if you're in a moment of like emotionally connecting, mentally connecting, and he's being like pulled into your body, or his attention is being pulled to other woman's body, there isn't a lot of mastery there of his sexual energy. Just isn't. Yes, I think the video that I was thinking about is the Tantric magnetism. So I'll link it, make sure you watch it so you can get a little bit more in depth with this. Does he see his sexual energy as sacred without making it grandiose? So is there a sense of self-respect from him as a man, that I respect my sexual energy? I don't just sleep with any woman that's available because I value myself, because that's good. But then the other side of it is, my sexual energy is so sacred that I'm like, you're gonna become rich if you have sex with me. You're gonna ascend to the 6th dimension if you have sex with me. You're gonna blah, blah, blah. Like, that's also a distortion. So is there a dignified sense of self-respect and self-honoring with his own sexual energy? And then if you do end up, becoming intimate, does this person chase the orgasm? Because if that's the case, then they're going more for the sensorial experience, and Tantra is about being able to weave together in the present. And even though you're doing Tantra with yourself, like Pink Tantra is like your path. Your sexual partner doesn't need to know like that you're practicing this. Of course, beautiful if you share and you can like join together in it, but it's not a pre-requirement, like he also needs to be in this, as long as he's able to hold the sacredness of the energy, so you can have that internal process that is going to be shared in the sexual act. So this is it's nuance, but chasing the orgasm, it's like it loses the space of being able to have a sensorial experience. So this will also let you know and give you a lot of information about the spiritual potential of this partner to actually become your tantric consort. Okay, lastly, spirituality. How does he nourish his spirit? And then second question, what does freedom mean to him? And how does he intend to create it? These questions, basically, if you know the answers to all of those questions, then you know whether you should be engaging your sexual energy with somebody or not. If you don't, then you need more time to get to know the person. It's that simple. That's like the value of this, is that it helps you also control the energy, because it's very easy to slip into lust once we're playing with the tantric energy, especially the energy of desire. So if you're able to answer these questions and all the answers feel good, then congratulations, you have found a tantric consort, somebody that can meet you there in that level, in an equal level, so you can continue your practice and step into more of the sexual elements of Tantra. Otherwise, then life is inviting you to continue practicing solo, to continue getting to know your body and weaving together with your energy, purifying yourself, and continue expanding that inner balloon. If there is a sense of urgency to finding the tantric partner, this is an indication of having some unresolved emotional issue, which, like I said, is connected to the mother wound. Think of it as whenever life pulls away any partners and you are forced by life to being alone, this is an opportunity to grow internally, to create more internal space. Why could that be happening? Because life is preparing you for somebody that has more energy than the partners before, because you're actively working on creating that internal space. What is that internal space for? Well, that's to receive from life. That's to receive solar energy from whatever source, from whatever way. It's not necessarily through a person. Sometimes it's that life gets very creative and sends you that solar energy through various means. So If you are alone, then see it as an opportunity to keep expanding into that. And then if you are in a relationship and maybe your partner is not interested in this path, it doesn't matter. This is your journey. It's your experience. This isn't like the Kama Sutra where you have to do certain position or anything like that. This is the weaving of your inner Shiva with your inner Shakti. So whenever you are in a relationship and you're engaging with a man sexually, it's a little bit different. Why? Because the moment that we start speaking about sex and all of the sacred, sexual magic practices, this is Red Tantra. So this entire series is Pink Tantra. For Red Tantra, there is 3 separate stages. The first stage is to purify the libido, where you're only having sex to conceive. So basically no sex unless you're intending to have a child. Second stage is to engage in sex, but to not have an orgasm, either party. And then the third stage is a natural fruit of the second stage. And that's when you experience the tantric bliss of becoming the embodied Shakti and the man becoming the embodied Shiva. Now, if you're in a relationship and you're in this path of Pink Tantra, just continue doing the solo practices. You can have sex, but just withhold your orgasm until you feel that you have purified your libido. That's the importance of exploring the sexual shadow and the animus. And this is the importance of all the foundational practices of mantra and nyasa. Eventually, if you're with a partner that is not interested in Tantra and you want to, the relationship might naturally end because he won't be able to keep up with you spiritually. If your partner wants to join Tantra, then invite him to find White Tantra for men and have him practice White Tantra as you're practicing Pink Tantra. Why not the both of you practicing White Tantra? Well, because men and women are different, and women historically have a tendency to withhold their sexual energy and repress it through shaming, through demonization. With men, is the opposite. They have to learn how to master that. It's like a dragon. So White Tantra is the most appropriate stepping stone, right? Like the foundational roots for preparing for Red Tantra. And for a woman, Pink Tantra is the best way to prepare for this. So that's why I don't necessarily go into detail about women that happen to find themselves in sexual relationships, but all the advice in terms of polarity and masculine testing and all of that still applies to that, because it will give you a new perspective on your current relationship. So just make sure that you continue with the practices alone and guide your partner to join White Tantra if you want to eventually step into Red Tantra in a safe, responsible, and grounded way. If you enjoyed this series and you want to dive deeper into the tantric path, then I invite you to check out my program, Varani. Varani is a private mentorship program where we go through your Vedic chart to look at your 8th house, find the Mahavidya that will attune to your natural energy, and create the Nyasa ritual for that specific Mahavidya. You'll get to receive your own mantra, which will activate, and you'll get to work with me through this process. It's very good to have a second set of eyes whenever we're tapping into something new, especially something as volatile as sexual energy, because of all those nuances that I talked about certain wounds showing up and certain sexual shadows showing up, and maybe getting a little bit lost in them. It's not a big deal if we do. Eventually we'll get back into line and align with what is, but if you want to dive deeper into the exploration of Tantra, Pink Tantra, then make sure to check out the description box below for the application. And if you found after this series that there are some things that you still want to work on because there are some developmental wounds that you are aware of, then make sure that to check out Venusian Woman, because in this program we walk through the mother wound, the father wound, and then also learning to sit in the feminine polarity by deprogramming, deconditioning all of these structures that keep us tight and rigid, and allow us to enter into a softer space. This softer space it's more of that internal space that allows for that inner marriage to start happening. So that's why those foundational wounds are the most important ones, and then we can step into the magic of Pink Tantra. I hope that you continue doing the practices and incorporate the mantras and the nyasa in your life. They will make a world of a difference. And now that the 9 days are over, don't stop, continue, keep doing the practices, give it at least a month. And after a month, you're gonna know, like you're gonna see, and then you're gonna wanna get on board if this is aligned with you, of course. So thank you so much for your time and for being here. I hope that you have a very pleasurable experience, a pleasurable life, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.